But they, you know what? Them guys, the first ones, they were really obviously working class. It was a tough. They were tough, man. They were hard. The Elephant Castle had a really bad reputation. They were nasty bastards, really. To be fair, very. You know, like it's very tribal. London's always been tribal.
Those early Teds did something as well, which the mods carried on with. That they wanted to wear their wealth.
Yeah. You know what I mean? They're actually asked to come over and contribute to the society, and they were treated pretty shabbily. There's no two ways about it.
Scar sound as well, the mods.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you mentioned Count Suckle earlier and Duke Vin. Then Count Suckle started a club called the Speakeasy in Carnaby Street, New Orleans, so Fats Domino. And instead of the piano stabs, it was the guitar stabs. So that become the word they use for that.
Scat.
You're like 15, white kid 15, where'd you get that music? You go into a black record shop, or there was quite a lot of record market stalls like Shepherd's Bush and Dalton. Eventually they would say, like when they were getting nicked and going in court, and they'd say he had a skinhead. They were just living their life and living their way of like clubs and pubs and football. Again, football become a big thing.
They wear also in their laces, like the colour of their team colours. Sometimes
when they were allowed to keep the laces, because most of the time the old people would take the laces out of the boots, so the boots would fall off their feet when they were walking around and fighting. So they were trying to. They were like offensive weapons, them boots.
And that's really interesting as well, because then, we'll get to this, but in sort of 10 years' time, around sort of 78, 79, that's suddenly why there's all these suits.
The thing about Buster is, as you said earlier, he come over in '64, which is really early. He come over early. He was adopted by the mods. There's stories of him like meeting him at the airport and giving him like a cavalcade on scooters. So his music would have been played by Count Suckle. The mods would have heard it. Hang about, he's coming over.
You know, like Jimmy Cliff, the Upsetters, the Ethiopians, Desmond Decker, the Liquidator.
About '83, I went to the Isle of Wight, and the Skinheads bottled off Edwin's stuff.
That's outstanding. Anyone watching this, hats off to the Barbican. I mean,
you know Central London, how expensive it is, right?
Yeah.
To give you a space for free for 5 months and do what you want in there is very rare.
Right, lights, camera, action. On this week's show, I have two creatives in the cab who are extremely passionate about music and culture. We are going to be delving into the early reggae ska era in the UK and talking about Trojan Records, the two-tone record label, early fashion, and how this incredible music touched and influenced youth culture from the working class, from the inner cities back in the late 60s and the 70s. We're also going to be talking about an exhibition which is currently at the Barbican in London called From the Caribbean to Coventry, which I can't wait to talk about. We have two diamond geezers in the back. We've got the one and only David Burke and Mark Baxter.
Hello.
Yes, guys, it's an absolute honour to have you both in the cab.
Pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
Absolute pleasure.
And listen, I really can't wait to talk about this history. I know we're kind of, not from certain eras we're going to be talking about, but like with research and everything else, we got kind of like a good idea on, how this kind of scene was developing.
Yeah.
So anyone watching this as well, please leave a comment on this interview as well, and let us know how you got into, becoming a mod or a skinhead or rude boy, and it'd be great to, to listen to your stories as well. But yeah, listen, it's an absolute honour to have you both in the cab, and I'm going to get straight into it. Growing up in London and other parts of the UK after World War II must have been extremely tough. London was basically, it was like a bomb site. There was food rationing, no money. Yeah. It must have been so hard to live in those times.
Yeah, well, my mum and dad, my dad was born in 1934, my mum was in 36, so they were kids during the Blitz.
Wow.
So they would have been growing up early 50s as like late 40s, early 50s, and they were like basically into the teddy boy and teddy girl scene. Because my old man loved to sing. My old man, he was a club singer, so he loved to be around that. So any of that music he'd try to adopt and try to become something. My mum was just mad on clothes. They're both mad on clothes actually. I didn't really realise that till later. So even though there was a lot of shortages and not a lot of money about, and London was blitzed to pieces. Really, they would have just made the best of it. They would have that they got hold of it and done what they could. My mum was a seamstress, so she made her own clothes.
Wow.
And she probably made the same for the old man as well. So, yeah, they were the first teenagers, really, weren't they? When you think about their age group, they would have been like mid-50s, they'd have been 18, 19, whatever. They were the first teenagers with a bit of money in their pockets. So as the country recovered from the war, they would have been, they would have been access to records, gigs, going to see concerts, clothes, and that would have sparked the interest. Like the Teddy Boy thing would have been the first youth cult really to probably upset the establishment as well. Like they're doing it themselves. Before that, most blokes were dressed like their dad. The sort of tweed jacket and stuff.
Yeah, because the fashion was quite different, wasn't it? What did they have, like the was it like the rockabilly style haircut?
Well, the Tony Curtis, he was a big star in Hollywood, and he had that sort of quiff.
That's right, it's the quiff, wasn't it?
Yeah, there's those guys going into barbers in the Old Kent Road saying, "Make me look like Tony Curtis, will you, mate?"
Yeah, and the brothel,
which I always thought was great. Yeah, all the creepers and stuff.
Brothel creep.
But you know what? Them guys, the first ones, they were really obviously working class. It was a tough. They were tough, man. They were hard. The Elephant Castle had a really bad reputation. They were nasty bastards, really, to be fair. Very, it's very tribal. London's always been tribal.
Yeah.
Postcard wars now, but then basically it was the same thing. If you went off your manor and you were not recognised, there'd be someone noising you up to find out who you were, where you're from. It was exactly the same, but like the old man wasn't really into that. He wasn't an aggro merchant. He just loved his clothes and then singing. So he was. I think that's where my love of music and fashion come from.
It all stems from that.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I do as well think that those early Teds did something as well, which the mods carried on with, that they wanted to wear their wealth. So they wanted to wear the draped jackets because, material was still rationed. So if you could actually spend a little bit, show that you spent a little bit more money, or you had that money disposable to have that even extra sort of few inches on the end of your jacket, it's like, well, look at me. And I think that's a really important sort of shows that lineage through Teddy Boys, mods, or right through to today. Kids are still wanting to wear their wealth. They do it in a different way. They show it with labels and whatever. But it's the same principle. It's a lovely thing, and it's important for kids to be able to express themselves and try and rise out of their surroundings. Again, now still trying to do the same thing, which I think is to be applauded. Only to be applauded.
Oh, 100%.
I would say as well as that the end of national. The end of sort of conscription into the army was a big one as well in the 50s, where doing national service, where suddenly kids would leave school at 15. My dad left school at 15, and he did his national service. He then worked a couple of years and then had to go back in and did his 2 years national service. So his career was interrupted. Whereas once national service finished, you could leave school and you could know, your employer would know, that you were going to be with them for 5, 10, 20 odd years or whatever. So they gained a disposable income quicker, I suppose is what I'm trying to say. And with that disposable income, what do you spend it on? You spend it on clothes, you spend it on music, and you spend it on transport. That's what we all kind of. That's what we all still want to do, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. Even at our age.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's never left us.
No. And so to have that disposable income, to have that money in the pocket, and that suddenly you get coffee bars, you get all of that stuff growing out of war-torn London, really, which, as I say, rationing comes to an end, national service comes to an end, and suddenly you get this explosion, and suddenly you get new music coming in. Yeah,
without a doubt. I mean, I think one of the big factors as well with different styles of music as well is in 1948, just after World War II, the British Nationality Act offered people from the colonies the right to live and work in Britain. The government basically needed help to rebuild the country. Yeah. So in June 1948, the first ship, HMP Empire Windrush, arrived in the UK with around 1,000 workers. So basically, and some of them were actually war veterans of World War II as well. So they come here to basically help rebuild the UK. So can you tell me the importance of the Windrush generation?
I mean, it's a bit like David said there about the influences. You got basically a battered country, right? They're battered, and then these new influx of like immigration coming in, but not, obviously the Windrush, but also like Italians and people who were displaced. They were finding their places over here, And those influences, it took a little while for those influences that they brought to get into our mainstream. I mean, the resistance would have been, it'd have been like confusion, you know, basically who are these people? And I think the issue, as you just rightly said, they were invited over. That's been forgotten.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're actually asked to come over and contribute to the society, and they were treated pretty shabbily. There's no two ways about it.
And they was helping the NHS. There were a lot of nurses, a lot of the bus and train drivers, steel production. And it must have been in some ways so gutting to come here and obviously maybe feeling not accepted.
Yeah, I mean that's the criminal thing of it, really. That they come over with very enthusiastic, and within a very short time they would realise the housing was terrible.
The weather was
shocking, and everything they were probably promised or thought that they would envisaged wasn't quite what it was. It's a tough existence. And then of course you got in Teddy Boys, we mentioned earlier, certain elements of that then started to attack those guys in the race riots in Nottingham in '56 and in London in '58. So it was brewing up to that sort of level. It was getting out of hand. And then, but really, what happened after that is then once that was sort of the bloodletting was done, and obviously it was horrible at the time. Then the next generation, the sons and daughters of the ones of '48 they were coming teenage in the late '50s, early '60s, and their influence is what becomes what we're talking about really for us, like the mods, and then later on the skinheads, and then obviously later on the two-tone. But so it's a very convoluted, complicated story to get to the point of where we're celebrating two-tone and inclusivity. Because
there was little sparks sort of kind of sparking off. I mean, like with sound system and blues parties, they started popping off, and I think it was Duke Vin and Count Suckle arrived in the UK from Jamaica in 1954 and started playing, the early ska music, So these kind of bluesy type parties and sound system stuff, that must have had an impact on some of the communities, that especially musically as well, listening to all this kind of brand new music that I'd never heard before.
Well, I think that's the thing about Britain, especially, is we do take other people's cultures, and we do, and I'm not sure about the rights and wrongs of it, but we will take other people's cultures, we mix it with our own, and we'll spit it back out in something again, something completely different. It's taken quite a long time to do that with hip hop and sort of more modern stuff, but we kind of got there in the end. But certainly back then, we were absolutely taking all these different cultures, mixing them up, and kind of putting our own spin on it. You've only got to look at the Stones listening to blues, and all of those bands listening to American blues artists who couldn't even get arrested. Well, they could get arrested at home. That was the problem. But they certainly couldn't use the same toilets as their white counterparts. But people like the Stones and the Who and various other bands, and the Beatles to some extent as well, pull all those influences in, mix them up, spit them back out, and make them very popular.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt.
And so I think that probably is the same thing with blues, with the same thing with all blues parties with ska. That's where those kids were hearing that music. They were hearing their parents' friends playing that music. They take that on board. It becomes part of the culture, and then as the musical ones want to start making their own music, so they take those influences subconsciously. They're not doing it. They're not doing it, consciously. They're not making a sort of conceited, concerted effort to do it. That it's just what they're seeped in, and so when they go to make their own music, there's those cultures with it. There's those elements within it, and I think that again, that's only to be applauded. And even up till now, it's great that we do that, and it's great that understanding other people's cultures, learning about them, respecting them is really important,
and accepting the culture,
especially now. It resonates with now. Absolutely resonates with what's going on now, and that the whole thing about the exhibition is that it wasn't just to look back at the past. It's actually to put a little bit of a mirror up to what's happening now, I think. And I think those things are important.
Oh, without a doubt. Well, we just sort of touched on it. In the late 50s and the 60s, the mod era started in London which just came just after the Teddy Boy era. You know, they looked sharp, they looked amazing. They was listening to like music like Small Faces, Booker T and the MGs, the Beatles, the Who, rhythm and blues music, Motown, Stax. Was they also listening to that kind of early ska sound as well, the mods?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you mentioned Count Suckle earlier and Duke Vin. Then Count Suckle started a club called the Speakeasy in Carnaby Street.
That's right.
Very, very. I think he's 62, something like that.
And the one down the Parade Street as well in Paddington.
Well, that was later. Yeah, he become really famous in down the Speakeasy, and then Georgie Fay would go down there, and the All Nighter mods would hit it really hard as well. The All Nighter Flamingo guys, but what they were basically doing, they couldn't get gigs in other clubs, so they started their own clubs, and they started their own parties, and they started their own, and then their influence would have been rubbing off like Georgie Fay. I mean, he was picking up on the book of TMG and Jimmy Smith, and he was picking up the Hammond organ sound, because before that he was a piano player, so he developed quite quickly. And that music they were playing, I mean, I read a little bit about it this week in preparation for this, and it was like American R&B music, which is basically coming from New Orleans, so Fats Domino. And instead of the piano steps, it was the guitar steps. So that become the word they use for that. Scat, yeah. So basically, that noise that they made, and that would have been the early mods, the original mods would have picked up on that through that exposure, underground exposure at those clubs like the Flamingo and the Speakeasy, and it never really went overground till mid '60s, but the underground early guys would have just been soaking all that up, and it gets really complicated because you got the Ivy League American styles coming in, you got the continental Italians and French styles, so the Italian cinema, French cinema. It's a big story, that one, and maybe for another cab ride.
Yeah, we'll have to do that in a part 3 or part 4.
that will go on for hours, that one.
But I was going to say, you know, there must have been, with the mods, there must have been a bit of inspiration there from the RudeBoys.
Yeah, I mean, I will give the early guys, the early mods, their respect. They would adopt and adapt a lot of different styles, and a lot of musical and imagery, and films, and they were really into that stuff. They were educating themselves really, really early, and taking on different, as Dave said, different cultures, and making it into, like, it goes in the melting pot and becomes something else, and it becomes mod. And I think the trouble is most mainstream people can't really understand what mod really is. It's very complicated. It's more modernist. You've got the early jazz guys in there as well, late 50s guys. So the modern jazz, so the Coltrane, Miles Davis, and then our own guys, Ronnie Scott, Toby Hayes, them guys, Phil Seaman on the drums. They really lived that life they were reading about. Because at the end of the day, obviously, there's no film, there's no Google, there's no footage. It's just word of mouth and
people's stories from back in the day.
Yeah, they were a lot of the jazzers were going working the cruise liners to go to America in the bands and on the cruise liners just to get 48 hours in New York in the late 50s, and then when they come back, they brought the stories back and the music back, and they tried to then make their own version of that. That's why it always sounds a little bit different. It's never the same, because they put their own slant on it. It's like Small Faces trying to be Booker T and MGs. They're not quite that. And they make their own sound, and in some ways it's as good, if not better. It's a big shout out, but it's a different sound, and it's a really deep and complicated story, but we love it because we're a bit of sort of nerds on that. And it's like, of course, out of that come the music and the fashions and the political and the social life, and it's a big story, but it's all wrapped up in one big bundle, really, and you just have to pick your way through it.
Oh, without a doubt. And that's why it's quite important to, have a casual chat like this in the back of the cab about, how this scene was kind of developing in the early days. And, like as I said, my mum and dad were both mods of the late 50s and the 60s, so they used to tell me stories, going Lyceum Ballroom in the afternoon. My mum used to dress with the beehive haircut, the pencil type skirts. Old man, going around on a Lambretta and all that. The mods looked like sharp.
But the thing about the scooters is, realistically, the scooter coming into culture is a huge social shift, because what it allows working class kids to do, you can buy these things quite cheap, but what it means they can do is they can get jobs away from where they live and that aren't on public transport. So they're suddenly not tied down to bus routes, because obviously no one had cars, so they're not tied down to bus routes or tube or whatever. They could actually go and get careers outside of their local area. And that's really important, because suddenly that means they can start earning more money, and they can actually do what the whole thing about being a modernist is really to lift yourself out of where you come from and make yourself better. And that's why really it's really the only youth cult, I think, big shout, but really the only youth cult that does that wants to lift you out from where you are, make you better, make you perceived to be better by the way you dress and the way your hair's cut and the shoes that you wear and your job and your career and your life. There isn't really another youth cult that's ever done that. All the other ones tend to be very middle class and where you dress down, where a true modernist, you can be any age. You don't have to have a particular haircut, you don't have to look a particular way, but it gives you a certain attitude to life to try and be better than where you are, where you come from. And I think that's a good aspiration to have for everyone still.
Yeah, it's
and that all comes back down to Lambrettas and Vespers, which is crazy.
Now, I was going to say, right, there was two pivotal record labels from London. You had Island Records and also Trojan Records, which come out in set up in 1968. Can you tell me the importance of those two record labels?
Yeah, the music is, again, this is quite complicated, because the names your names you're saying, they would not be known. The music on a lot of that stuff was known on it later, but a lot of that music, a lot of those artists were on small independent labels in Jamaica. I mean, when the need for the music to come to this country, so people were importing it like for blues parties and clubs and stuff, then the music would become more accessible, and you're like 15, white kid 15, where'd you get that music? You go into a black record shop, or there was quite a lot of record market stalls like Shepherd's Bush and Dalston, quite well respected stalls, or people would sell them out of the back of a car. They would just literally pull up as.
Well, that's what Chris Blackwell was doing. He used to have a Mini Cooper, didn't he? And he used to drive up and down and sell records out the boot of his Mini Cooper.
Exactly. So that basically it wasn't clean and tidy and distributed like it would be now. It was a bit ad hoc, and those labels would just become like people like guys who immigrated to this country would set up that, like Trojan, they'd set up a label in London and in the UK to basically receive the records, call it a certain label name, and then re-release in some ways that music to the white youth who were all ready for it and gagging for it really from 68, 69, and that's the first wave of skinhead culture, which basically they were adopting the look of the Jamaican rude boy kid. So the young black kids in Brixton and other areas that looked a certain way, short hair, trousers up their knees basically, red socks, and that look got adopted by the white kids who had the really shaven hair, which went against all the grain for what was going on with the other white kids in there at the time, which is the hippie look. They went complete opposite, and they would adopt workwear clothes like big boots and donkey jackets and stuff, and look really anti-fashion, really, which then become a fashion. That's why it gets complicated, because people only see it as a very aggressive look, but they were very particular what they were wearing. They were very sharp, them guys. Their suits were like made out of mohair, and they were very, very sharp dressers. Tailor-made, bespoke-made gear, very expensive shoes, and it was all a look, but it looked so strange in the mainstream when everyone's got really long hair and got a bit airy and flary and a bit hippie and drippy, and these guys are not that.
So is that basically, Bax, what happened? Was it like like you could say some of the mods basically in 1968, 69 kind of moved away from that scene and got more into the skinhead?
It's more like the younger brothers of the first wave of mod. You see, like the first wave of mod, 62, 65, whatever, the younger brothers would look like, and they would become like what they call hard mod. They would pare down the look. They wouldn't be so, into the lapels are getting a bit bigger. No, we're going to go back to the basics, and they would go harder. They look stronger and tougher.
Big boots.
Yeah, they would just pare the look down. It wouldn't be so flowery with it. They would be harder, more street look. And then it just took off really quickly. And they weren't known as skinheads; they were known as peanuts and pinheads, and no one knew what to call them. There was no look. Yeah. There was no name for it.
I think wasn't it the media that?
Yeah, eventually they would say, like, when they were getting nicked and going in court, and they'd say he had a skinhead. Like, his head was basically skinned because they had a #1 crop and no one knew what to call it. And gradually they become known as skinheads. But it wasn't constructed like that. It was just kids on the street, like they always do until the media get hold of it and then they overexpose it. They were just living their life and living their way of, like, clubs and pubs and football. And again, football become a big thing. The aggression of football become, like, again, our end, your end, we're going to take your end. It became very violent times, really.
Didn't they wear also in their laces, like the colour of their team colours sometimes?
Yeah, that was
laces?
when they were allowed to keep the laces, because most of the time the old people would take the laces out of the boots, so they couldn't. The boots would fall off their feet when they're walking around and fighting, so they couldn't. They were trying to. They were like offensive weapons. Them boots, you know, they're big steel toe caps. But yeah, there was like the piping on the Fred Perry. The colours on they would be like West Ham colours or Chelsea colours. The piping on the Fred Perry polo shirt, you know, that become maybe a bit later. I think it was a bit later and more than the time. I think at the time it was just a look, and it just as all these things do, they adopt and they go further and further the longer they go on.
If you look at the Kinks. The Kinks about 1966, you could almost see the divergence in there when they start singing about dedicated follower fashion and the shirts are getting really frilly, the hair's getting longer, the Who start going really disappearing off that way as well to some degree. Whereas, you know, other people stay, you know, there's an element that want to stay with soul music. That's when you start to begin to get people listen. You know, they don't want to be listening to funk or that kind of stuff. That as the music gets kind of slower, they want to carry on listening to faster music. So you keep there's an element that want to carry on listening to soul music, which goes into northern soul as a later kind of look. But it's absolutely around sort of 66, 67, it starts to diverge. You can literally see it in the photographs about the way the split of the two sorts of people. And as Mark says, the younger brothers are like, I don't want to look like that. That's not, no. You know, I'm not going in that way. But and that's really interesting as well, because then, you know, we'll get to this, but in sort of 10 years time, around sort of 78, 79, that's suddenly why there's all these suits, these mohair, 3-footer mohair suits start appearing in charity shops, because people have got rid of all of that. But it's only 10 years. But suddenly, we used to buy suits for £1. We could buy a mohair suit for £1 from a charity shop that was just absolutely beautiful, beautifully cut. But it's because the you know, people have got shot of them by then. They've got married, they've moved on, they've got rid of it.
Yeah, and then you're picking up the
and that's
the remnants.
Yeah, and it's you know. It's so available and so cheap for school kids to be able to, you know, those kids to be able to buy that stuff.
You're right, because you wouldn't be able to afford a suit, would you?
Absolutely
So
not.
you go to the charity shop, Jumble Sale or whatever, and you
there's hundreds of them, hundreds of the things.
Yeah. I was going to say as well, like you also had the suede head, and the suede head was that the suede head slightly more kind of. You know, they'd wear like brogues, loafers, crombies, sheepskins. Did they look slightly? And I think their hair was slightly longer.
Yeah, that was the. I mean, I've written a book called Sculpture about suede heads. It's about a year. It really only lasts about a year, but it's basically the result of the amount of people losing their jobs or getting thrown out of school because they had a really short haircut. They were getting grief on the streets. They were getting nicked. They were getting attacked, and they decided to basically to soften it a little bit, let the hair grow a little bit, not too much, but a little bit, and then they would start adopting loafers, nice pair of loafers, as opposed to a pair of boots. I mean, so the look didn't go massively. I mean, it's a really hard look to pigeonhole, but they didn't go massively away from the skinny look. They just softened it, not so aggressive, more into a sort of, as David said, like almost like a soul boy look. I mean, there's a shop called John Simon's, which was known as the Ivy Shop then in Richmond, and he sold this look like brass button blazers and college ties, nice pair of trousers and button-down shirts. So it's still quite mod, but it's actually Ivy League. It's American Ivy League look, but it's got mixed up in the mod thing. And these suede heads would walk in, and they would buy that sort of look. And as John said, they looked like Harvard graduates, but they certainly weren't that. They were just geezers off the street, but that's when it started confusing everybody. As David said, you dress out of your environment. Your environment isn't that. You're saying looking like a Wall Street banker or a city man, and you're not. When you start speaking, you sound like me, but you look completely like you're confusing people, and that confusion is what I love. You're losing people, and they can't keep up, And that's what I love, because they not they did it on purpose, they did it because it was a fashion and they wanted to look a certain way. But the byproduct was they lost people who couldn't keep up with them. And that was the case right through till, I suppose, the early 80s with the casual thing and the football, football casuals. Now it's got a bit dissipated. Now you've got this very little look. Now it's all a bit too casual for my look, my taste. But, you know, at the time, you belonged to something. You had to look a certain way, otherwise you're in trouble, basically. You had to look a certain way. But again, certain people then would change that slightly and go a different way with that. And we've always done it. I think the youth of this country have always done that, and up to a point, they still do to a point. I mean, they're probably wearing stuff now that I wouldn't recognise, but they're still only wearing certain brands and certain looks to stay within their remit of their friends and their peers.
In the early 60s, there was a singer-songwriter from Jamaica called Prince Buster, who recorded classic tracks like One Step Beyond, Enjoy Yourself, Madness, Al Capone, 10 Commandments, and many more. And he also appeared on ITV's Ready, Steady, Go in 1964. Can you tell me the importance of Prince Buster and the impact he had, you know, on music?
Well, I mean, just by the list of what you said there, you can see why people would be listening to that and be influenced by it. And then obviously there was the influence back contemporary to him. You can see why people would listen to that, and then you can see why it was picked up in '79 by Madness, and you know, and others within that two-tone genre. But I think he was doing things. He was doing things with music, I think, that were really fresh and really new, which again would appeal to young kids in this country in the early 60s. And I think he started his own record label as well, didn't he? You know, he wasn't just a musician, and it's important, I think, to recognise these people as they're not just artists. A lot of these guys were also very, very good business people. They understood that they need how to make money in a time and a place that wasn't easy for people who came from that, who looked like they looked, come from where they came from. And actually he you know, starts his own record label because he can't get, you know, stuff out. You know, usual story that's still going on. But these guys are bright, intelligent people who can make music which other people want to listen to. I mean, he's been sampled as well, I think, Prince Buster. Again, sort of hip-hop community picked up on him a little bit, various bits and pieces. Again, not massively my genre, but I know that, you know, and that's a sign of somebody who's influential, who has a legacy that continues to get kind of turned over and picked up on by new artists and younger people. I think that's why he's important.
Yeah, I mean, he's an absolute legend, and he must have had a huge impact back then.
Yeah, and as did other guys, you know, coming around the same sort of time as well, because people pick. I mean, he even charted in America, I think, Prince Buster, which is kind of unusual, I think. I don't know how many other ska or things have been picked up over there.
The thing about Buster is, as you said earlier, he came over in '64, which is really early. He come over early. He was adopted by the Mods. There's stories of him like meeting him at the airport and giving him like a cavalcade on scooters, his car back to where he was staying. There's loads of them stories. He was picked up because his music would have been played at the Count Suckle Club mentioned earlier. So his music would have been played by Count Suckle. The Mods would have heard it. Hang about, he's coming over. Wow, that was massive then. You know what I mean? This guy's coming from Jamaica. No one really knew pretty much what he looked like, but you know, his history was he was basically a street kid. Really, he was a boxer, pretty good boxer and all. He was a bit of a street kid, as Dave said, good business head on him. So when he got opportunities, he was away. You know, he wasn't going to waste that opportunity, and he was still fondly remembered because of all that. People remembered him one of the first ones to come over. And the first record that really made it big on the scale was that My Boy Lollipop.
Yeah, I was going to say that because that was actually a cover of My Girl Lollipop from the 50s.
Is that right? I didn't know that. Yeah,
but it was Millie Small.
Yeah, so that's quite poppy and a bit, you know, very catchy. Whereas Buster wasn't really doing that. He was the alternative to that, really. I mean, that was perfect chart material, My Boy Lollipop. Whereas he was doing Al Capone, which is, when you listen to it now, it still stands pretty radical music, really.
I mean, what an amazing
very clever, and also the production. I'm not sure if Scratch Perry was involved with that, but I wouldn't be surprised. Very, very clever production. And again, you know, if you're looking to say it different, he would have been the perfect man for that. And then Chris Blackwell comes over with Millie, and then that record goes gangbusters and goes mental. And that really then, from then, the musical genre, ska, that starts crossing over massively.
I mean, you know, like Jimmy Cliff, the Upsetters, the Ethiopians, Desmond Decker, the Liquidator. I mean, you know, there was so much, you know.
Desmond Decker was enormous, wasn't it? Liquid, I mean, Israelites, and it makes a great. I love it, Mick. Great records, and they were like, again, this is where I always use my South East London thing. Like youth clubs. Yeah, I mean, youth club. I lived on the estate in Peckham. You heard that music. Other people come to people's houses or youth clubs, and you were mixing with a whole range of different cultures on that estate.
100% backs, 100%.
Yeah, I'm thankful for it now. I didn't understand it at the time. I'm 8 or 9. What do I know? But you know, now I'm thankful for it because I realised I was given an education I didn't even know I was getting. And then when you think back, to be honest, since doing this exhibition with Dave, it's starting to remind me of that stuff because I've been, you know, a long way. I left it a long while ago and I forgot all that stuff. But really, it's still there. And when you look at the photographs or hear the music, you think, Christ, I was in the middle of all that without really realising it. And that music, Desmond Decker particularly, would have been, you know, go down a youth club, there'd be a Bruce Lee film on first. They'd always put a Bruce Lee film on. Places going mental, and then they'd have a few tunes at the end of it, and that stuff would be, you'd be hearing that, but also amongst all the, like, a bit of chart music at the same time, and old Motown, old Stax, Atlantic. That's a great education for a young kid. If you love your music, you pick up on it, and then years later when it becomes fashion, or you got money, you can buy yourself the Four Tops Temptations, Otis Redding, you know what I mean? They're gonna, that's a body of work, and then of course you throw in the Small Faces, the Who. Obviously, I'm a Beatles man as well. You throw that in there, and then you can start seeing the influences all over the place. But also the ska and that, which become reggae, Bob Marley, blah blah blah. It becomes another world, you know.
So basically, in 1979, there was. When would you say that kind of? Actually, when would you say that kind of? It kind of slowed down and then picked back up again. Was it 1979 with obviously when Jerry Damers from the Specials founded the Two Tone label?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I guess there's obviously the reggae thing had carried on, was getting bigger and bigger, but I suppose 78, 79, you come out, well, I think the most important thing that we missed out there really is obviously have the punk thing in 75, 76, 77, but by the time you get to 78, it's 79, it's the end of it really. It's all gone very sort of postcards from London, and you know, pictures of punks in Camden. It's all very nice and twee really, when it wasn't when it started. 76, 77, I remember again the Teddy Boys raised their bequiffed heads, and they're fighting on the King's Road with punks. I remember all of that. It was crazy. I remember front page news. It was, you know, it was a moral panic. It was awful, you know, the Pistols and all that stuff. And one thing I was going to say as well is what we do really well in this country is aggression. Most musical styles that we have are pretty aggressive. You know, for some reason, and I don't know why, but we do that really very, very well. It's kind of angry. So, you know, getting back to the Who smashing things up.
Yeah, but well, you know what it is? It was a way to release that kind of anger.
Yeah, it's an island mentality as well, I think. I think we have that island mentality. We do, you know, we've given the world binge drinking and sort of football violence. It's kind of, that's our legacy. And, amongst
that's
other
me.
But it's true, and so suddenly you get, you know, those early punks. It was rough out there. You know, there was a lot of trouble. I was 10 in 76, 77. I was 11, and it was, you know, it was violent. It was proper violent, and I wasn't even in the city as such, but that's dead. By the time you get to 78, 79, it's gone. We want something new. You know, English kids want something new. British kids want something new. They wanted the next thing, and the next thing really comes out of Coventry is taking that punk ethos, that aggression and that anger and that politics that was an original punk, but mixing it with what they've grown up with, which is black culture, which is reggae and ska, and mixing it up again and spitting it back out, and you get those you know, Jerry Damers. And Jerry Damers is really interesting because obviously he's quite well educated. Jerry, he comes from a decent family, and which gives him, I think, in a way, the balls to be able to go to a record company and say, do you know what, we've got I want to build, you know, a Motown style label. And that's not easy for someone who doesn't have an education and his intelligence to be able to do, to at six, at his age, young, not to be intimidated, to be able to go into someone like Chrysalis and say that takes something.
Jerry's got so much passion and determination. He was shining through, wasn't he?
Yeah, and intelligence, and skill at being able to get what he wanted. And you have to have those things if you're going to go into business, which is basically what he did, as well as being an artist. To put a record label together with multiple bands and all of the politics that must go on around that, and it's not easy, and to navigate your way through that, and then to come out with what he comes out with in '79 onwards, it's just incredible. The man's that is really incredible. There's not many people that have done that, and hats off to him. Pork pie, hats off to him for that one. It's important.
What an absolute legend! And what come out of the two-tone label? Madness, the Selector, Body Snatchers, the Beat, the Specials. I mean, and also as well, a lot of them were charting, weren't they, in the charts?
Yeah, exactly.
So basically, it was pushing that kind of that scene back into the people's houses, back into their front rooms again. So there must have been like a second wave of that kind of star era.
Yeah. Again, it's the kids. It's sort of 13, 14-year-old kids, and we said it all along. It's a great look. I mean, that's quite often what the first thing that kids get into is the look of something. They want to look like that. The whole thing about that scar, that mod thing is actually very easy it's very easy to do it very quickly. You can get into it as you get older and you get more money and all that stuff, and you can get into the right sort of shoes. But as a kid at school at 13. You have a school uniform, you have black trousers, a black jacket, a white shirt, you might have to wear a tie, and you can wear shoes. Well, hang on a second, when you get home, you can put a pair of white socks on, change your tie, and go stick some badges on your lapels, and you're out. You're looking like Paul Weller. You're looking like Jerry Dammers.
You're looking the business, innit, Bags?
Yeah, mate, yeah. That I'm just sitting here thinking that, also when they end up on like Top of the Pops, because it was a massive program back then, wasn't it?
It was huge, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Specials and Madness turn up on that, and you're sitting there watching it, and you're thinking, I remember watching Madness do The Prince. I'm thinking, bleed, no, I've heard this before, right? I know this record, I know this music. I actually knew the music more than the record, obviously, but I knew. And then they looked a certain way, and there's many reports of people saying, going to school next day, going, right, when I go home and I'm going to get my hair cut off, I'm going to turn, like as Dave said, turn my blazer into a jacket with a few badges. And you adopted a look quite easily. And then of course you didn't adopt a lifestyle like that, because you go looking for more than music. You go looking for more information about the bands, and don't forget, again, we're all pre-Google here, right? It's not easy to do. You got to go and to record shops,
find it.
You got to go and find it. You got to meet, and then you meet older people who say, "Yeah, mate, I got this. I got them records. Have a listen to those." Or I got some old clothes. You might be able to get a suit out of that, or And it's all that passing it on. That passing it on thing that happened.
Passing on the knowledge.
Yeah, and if your dad was more than an old skinhead, he might have a few bits in his wardrobe and go, "Yeah, somewhere that." Might be moles too big, but gradually it would be passing on that thing. I always got passed on records. My uncles were on mods. My dad was a singer. There's always music in my house, and then he would go. My uncles especially would have given me a box of records, and in there'd be all those records I mentioned earlier, Ford Top, Small Faces, all that. And you go, wow, there's a body of work there you can only learn from. And then if you then go and see. Or you see the Specials or the Madness on your television, it's direct impact. You're sitting there having your tea, and then they're on your telly in front of you. And millions of people would have watched Top of the Pops back then. Millions of people.
Because Bax and David, there was only really 2 or 3 channels, wasn't it?
Yeah,
so it wasn't like we were sport for choice with 100 channels. There was 3 channels. So Top of the Pops coming on a Thursday night at 7:30 on BBC One.
Yeah, that's why they have so much impact, because lot of things happening around that era. They're very, very well remembered, because you had no options. There was nothing else to watch. There was there's no other channels.
Christ, we're old, aren't we?
Yeah, basically, like now, I want to go back to 3 channels, because there's too much to watch now.
Yeah.
And most of it's pony, let's be honest. So if say in the early 70s when Bowie put his arm around Mick Ronson, all of a sudden the world went mental, right? All he's done is put his arm around a fella, but it's like. wow, this is obscene, and this is
another moral
crazy,
panic, isn't it?
and it's
It's a big deal, isn't
a
it?
massive impact on the country. There'd be questions in the House of Parliament. There'd be the newspapers full of stories, and these things happen, and they are. And if like we're getting to that age now, we remember that happening at the time.
Just
Now, yeah, well, I can remember it very clearly. But you can watch it on YouTube now, and so you can catch up. But at the time, there was no way of recording that. You were there, right?
Oh, you heard about it?
Yeah, but next day, did you see that? If you said no, I ain't talking to you no more. See you later. If you was like, yeah, I was there, right, you could be my mate because you were watching what I saw. And it was that inclusivity. You had to be part of that crowd. Immediately, you had to be part of that crowd. If you weren't, you were out the door, weren't you? You were in trouble. And then that's why it becomes such a massive movement for a couple of 3 years, because the music and the look and it all reminded certain generations of another time, and it was getting well past the sort of crappy chart music that might have been around at the time. It was like aggressive, Dave said, punky, fast. They looked great. They had an attitude. They were like chewing gum on what they were miming. They weren't miming properly. They didn't give a fuck really, to be honest. They was having a great time up there, and they were young. They were 22, 23. And as Dave said, Dammers is a fascinating character. I mean, the son of a vicar. We would never believe that, but the intelligence he had, he could drive that the right way. I think he drove everyone pretty mad as well because he's a perfectionist. But at the same time, he was right to be that because he knew what he wanted to do, and he did it. He created a complete scene.
And it takes a certain level of intelligence as well to realise that you've got to have people around you who are almost better than you. You know, in that they can add rather than having such a big ego that you want to be the main man all the time and it's all about you. Actually, to encourage bands to come in who are only going to grow your label or your business or whatever it is. That takes an absolute level of intelligence that someone that young is admirable. Is absolutely admirable, and you don't get to leave a legacy like he's left, which without having that level of sort of emotional intelligence, business acumen, all of that stuff. And in a way, that's why we wanted to put on the exhibition, because we wanted to take that culture, which has got a working class culture in it, and it almost could be disposable, and put it somewhere like a citadel of learning in some respects, into a library, into the Barbican. And that's our culture. It's not a classical culture, it's not a middle class culture, it's our culture, and those cultures need to be respected in some ways. And so to put that into somewhere like the Barbican, I think gives it a level of respectability that it deserves, I suppose. In our own little ways is how we can show and say thank you to people like Jerry for giving us all those things we've just spoken about. Wouldn't really have happened if it wasn't for him. I mean,
it's amazing that the Barbican has put this on as well. We're sitting in
There is a very good point there.
and we are sitting in the car park underneath the Barbican doing this cab chat.
Yeah.
So full respect for the Barbican for putting on this exhibition.
Absolutely.
It's absolutely incredible that what you've done, and you guys and everybody involved with the exhibition. I haven't seen it yet, and I'm going to see it. It's at the Barbican in London, and can you tell me about some of the key pieces in there? Basically, what is it for the fans? Or?
Yeah, right here, that was the first thing when we spoke about doing it. It was for the fans, by the fans. It's basically we were fans of this music. Let's put something on for the fans. Let's make it a little bit more, like, a bit deeper as well. Like, it isn't just about frothy pop music and, a cut of your trousers. It's also about the immigration story. And in fact, our story starts way before the Windrush. It starts with Rhoda Dakar's father serving in the First World War, which sounds ridiculous, but he came from Jamaica and served in the First World War for the West Indian Regiment out in France and Belgium, and he was out there, and he stayed out there. He stayed in Europe. He ended up in Berlin in the 20s, Paris in the 30s, London in the 40s, and he set up clubs, very early Caribbean clubs in Piccadilly and the West End. And then a few years later, he met Rhoda's mum. They had Rhoda. Rhoda Dakar then becomes a body snatcher, and then part of the special. So the lineage, the line right through from 1916. right through to 1979. And we saw that as a great way of introducing loads of stories into this melting pot, which is what it is. And then it's a celebration of what it became, really. It's a celebration of the music, the look, the politics, the social side of it. And it's the way they were trying to unite black and white. They were trying very hard against a backdrop of quite a racist era. National Front, BNP. It got very mixed up because they looked like the skinhead look. They looked like that. They were attracting skinheads, and the bulk of them were fine. But there was always one or two in there who were wrong uns, and they were trying to cause havoc at the gigs and havoc outside, and it got tainted by those guys, and not everyone understood it. And that is always the problem with these things. The media then make it into something else. They concentrate on the bad stuff, not the good stuff. And I think 40 years. 40 years later, or wherever it is now, 45 years nearly, it's a chance to celebrate and work out what they were trying to do and what they achieved. And it's a mess. I think it's the record numbers up here, the biggest audience I've ever had, because it's tapped into a generation who want to go back and look at that and go, yeah, that was probably my happiest times when I was a kid. I loved the music, I loved the look. I then got married, mortgage, kids, money trouble. Well, then now they've gone past that stage to a certain extent, and they can look back and relax and celebrate that music and that look and remember those times. And the amount of people going down there, especially on a Saturday, is ridiculous. In fact, we had an email saying to us the Saturday afternoon is unmanageable. Which we loved, because as a pair of guys trying to sell an exhibition, we loved that phrase. I don't think they love that phrase. The library staff are not used to unmanageable. They aren't used to 3 or 4 people. There was people queuing on the stairs to get into it. I spoke about it today. I was up there today, and they were saying it was crazy. They couldn't cope. And so it just shows you the attraction of that era. It's a very strong attraction. And we didn't know. When we put it on, we had no idea that was going to happen. We were suggesting ideas. They liked that one. But we had no real concept of what was going to happen.
Well, I think also Mark touched on it there a little bit as well. So about 79, 80, it was violent. You go to those gigs, and getting there was bad enough, because obviously you've got hundreds of people outside who aren't getting in, haven't got tickets. So you've got the National Front out there, who then go on, obviously, in the 80s to start recruiting at football, all of that sort of stuff. There's a story there. But certainly you get in, there'd be fights breaking out all over the place. There's a great bit on, I think it's Dance Craze, or no, it's one of the specials videos where Terry Hall throws his tambourine at somebody, and you can see he properly launches his tambourine, because there's a little fight going on. Obviously someone's getting picked on, and that's when everyone then gets up on the stage. Neville Staple starts calling people, and it's just brilliant. But at that time there was a choice there was literally a choice you could make. You could either go with that lot, or you could go with that lot. Again, it's that tribal thing. And a lot of people did get seduced by that right-wing thing. They did get seduced by the look of the National Front and the feeling of belonging. All those things that we said were positive earlier can be flipped and be really, obviously negative. And so they were attracted to the right wing, and they were attracted to the National Front and the look and all of that stuff. And you get the scooter rallies in the 80s. I stopped going to scooter rallies, I think, about 83. I went to the Isle of Wight, and the Skinheads bottled off Edwin's Star, and I stood there and I thought, this is mental. I can't. If I stay as part of this, then I'm accepting it, and that's not. I can't do that. That's Edwin's Star, who ended up living in Nottingham, bizarrely, but he. To see that, to actually be physically part of that, and think, you just can't do. I can't be part of this. Yeah. So there's absolute choice, 2 paths to go down, and obviously you make your choice, and that's what we wanted to say at this exhibition. You can't preach to people. You can't. It's no point. But you can put the facts up on those walls, and then you let people make their own minds up. And the majority of the people, I'd say, who've been to the exhibition, chose what we would hope, think was the right path back then. And
it's and the exhibition must be like a celebration of this amazing scene that touched so many so many people around the UK. You know, I mean, how long's the exhibition on for anyway? I mean,
it's up there for 5 months. So it started on January the 12th, I think it was, and it ends on May the 25th.
Correct.
Which is Paul Weller's birthday. There's nothing to do with it, but it just happens to be a lovely thing for me. But anyway, and it's free to enter. So God bless the lot.
Wait, so you're not even charging?
No. God bless the lot. No. We're ethical, me and Dave. We're doing it for non-profit. It's like we want to put it on, and also God bless the library, because I've tried to get exhibitions away at the V&A, the Fashion and Textile Museum, Design Museum for the last 3 or 4 years. They don't want to know. They do not want to know. The library, you suggested it, yeah, help yourself. There's no money to be made, but that in a way, that in some ways, money, it queers the pitch. It corrupts and it makes it a different thing. This is, you can come back here, you can go as many times as you like. It ain't going to cost you a penny. But you can buy merchandise there, and we had good people help us out financially to put it on, and they are the ones selling the merchandise, so they're getting their money back through that way.
And big up to all them for sponsoring you.
Yeah, without that help from the Mod Fibre Clothing, Detail Magazine, and a couple of private individuals, we wouldn't be able to do it. Basically,
you wouldn't be sitting in the back of my car.
Oh no, because we both. I mean, I'm self-employed. Dave's got his own business. We have to go in the pound note to live, don't we? Like everyone else. Yeah. So we can't do these things for free without some help. And it's gone beyond anyone's expectations. And it's great that people are saying to us, "I didn't know there was a library there." So the library's being discovered, right?
I never even knew that, and I'm a cab driver.
Right, so the library's being discovered, which is great for the library. They're getting people saying, "I'll be back. I'll come and do it as a library," which is great. And the people there, they've been so supportive. They've been absolutely wonderful, very supportive. When we first went down there and pitched the idea of it, Michael was part of the 2 guys, Richard and Michael, and they weren't sure. I don't think anyone was really sure if the 2-tone thing was going to catch fire. But Michael, he turned out to be a fan of that music when he was a younger man, and he's now been making badges there, because it's all like handmade stuff, like handmade badges. They've been selling hundreds of them. I mean, hundreds of them, which is fantastic. We find it really funny. It's great that people are paying £1 for a badge, and he's making them. He's actually a librarian. He's standing there stamping badges out all day, which I think is hilarious. And it's great that it's gone back to the old school, really, where no one's trying to make a fortune out of it. And no one's moaning about that. It's just about it's for the fans, by the fans. That old phrase is true, though. It's not a cliche, it's true. And just come along and enjoy it. And if I've had people say I was there 10 minutes, other people say I was there 90 minutes. They're all getting different things out of it. The feedback's been fantastic. And I'll say fair play to the library staff and the Barbican for giving us that space for free for 5 months, which is incredible, really. That's
outstanding. Anyone watching this, hats off to the Barbican. I mean,
Central London, how expensive it is, right?
Yeah.
To give you a space for free for 5 months and do what you want in there is very rare, very rare. And you say hats off to them. And we're delighted that people are travelling and making the effort to get to it, because the Barbican's a confusing place. It's a labyrinth of God knows what. You can't. Even today, I couldn't get in today. The automatic doors weren't working. Then I'm thinking, well, how'd you get in there? Because it's just an incredible place, and it's lovely because of that. It's a lovely old throwback 70s, 80s, brutalist building. But in the middle of it, there's loads of different diverse things being celebrated. There's theatre, there's cinema, there's free concerts, there's everything's in there.
So it's worth someone making the effort to come down from wherever they are to go and check this out, because there's obviously, you've got the brilliant exhibition, but there's other little bits and bobs to look at as well.
You can spend all day at the Barbican, I'm telling you, and drink and eat and relax and see all sorts of different worlds mixing. I mean, it really is. It's a great place to do it. Perfect for us, and we love the place anyway. So it was a wonderful opportunity to get a chance to go in there. But we found the staff, they couldn't be better. They couldn't be more accommodating. They let us do anything. They're just so easy going, and they know we've got the right intentions and at heart. We're trying to do positive things, and they've picked up on that. And so we're working with them as well as we go along. And it's been really a wonderful experience.
Well, hats off to all of them.
And
Yeah.
what we have done as well is, which I think is the first for them, we've got a fan wall. So there's a website you can go to, and you can upload your memories, you can upload photographs if you've got anything, and then we'll print that out and we stick it up on the fan wall. And that started off as a few bits and pieces, and that's really filling up now, isn't it? I mean, it's really filling up. So that's ongoing, because it was all about. Again, it shouldn't just be about looking back. It should grow. That wall will continue to grow. But a lot of those memories aren't necessarily memories about then. They're actually memories about now. I met Neville. I went to the Two-Tone Museum last year, and it was brilliant. Those guys do need a good shout out as well.
Yeah.
The Two-Tone Museum in Coventry is phenomenal.
I don't even know about that.
I went up there with my friend Andrew, the photographer.
Yeah.
And we went up there just to talk to them, make sure that they were happy, understood what we were doing, and just to make sure that just to pay some respect to those guys. And they've been amazing. They've been amazing. They gave us a couple of pieces to display, some lovely pictures of Terry Hall, and then they've come down 3 or 4 times. They brought they brought a coach load of 50 down a couple of weeks ago, which was brilliant. They were absolutely brilliant, and they're all volunteers. The Coventry Music Museum, what a place! Absolutely, what a place! But the whole top floor is all two-tone, and so it's well worth a look.
Well, listen, hats off to all of you. Everyone involved, it doesn't matter who you are, everyone involved in this, big respect to you all. And I'd also like to do a big RIP as well to obviously Terry Hall, BUSTER. We've lost so many legends throughout the years. A massive RIP to everybody involved in that scene.
Terry was a bit of a shock, wasn't it? Terry was
massively,
because he was omnipresent in your life. He was still a relatively young man when he died as well, and it was just a shock. And the specials had come back; they were performing again. I went to see him at the Under Club a couple of 3 years ago. It was a fantastic gig, and I went a little bit sniffy, thinking I don't really like reunion gigs. I mean, all the band ain't really there, but I tell you what, it's infectious. That music is infectious. I mean, a couple of red wines didn't hurt, but you got carried away with it. A fantastic night. And I thought, good luck to them. They're making a good living out of it, and they're back on the road. And of course, now he's gone. It's probably ending now, because the voice of the specials is Terry Hall. You wouldn't want to try and bring someone in now. And it was a real shock of that one, real part of your childhood or young adulthood.
Well, amazing talent, and also obviously Fun Boy 3 and all that. I mean, absolute incredible talent, and a big shout out to all the band as well. All the band.
All the influences that went into it. Always what we're trying to celebrate. All those like Prince, Buster, all those guys. All that influence that went into it, black and white, is a fantastic story there. And then hopefully we've captured a little bit of that in the exhibition.
Max, listen, I'm not being funny, right? You need to start writing a film about that, because we've had quadrophenia, we've had the Northern Soul film, which was amazing as well. We need something on that level.
Well, there's one coming into the TV thing that's written by Stephen Knight, who did the Peaky Blinders. That starts very soon, mate. I tried to make a documentary or two about 5 years ago, and the BBC didn't want to know. They didn't see it as they don't see it as we see it. Because the people you got me going now, but the people you speak to try and get the money, they never live their life. They're middle class people. Nothing wrong being a younger person. They're not 25, 30. They have no relevance to what we're talking about. So you're trying to get money off those guys. So it's difficult, but with a TV series being made by Stephen Knight, that might open the doors. That might well open the doors, and hopefully someone does. But in a way, I think with the film Dance Craze we got shown in the exhibition, that's a perfect snapshot of what it was like. I don't think you could. You couldn't replicate that. It'd be too knowing. That wasn't knowing. That was just literally having a great time. And the crowd is worth watching more than the bands. The crowd's going crackers, mental, and having a fantastic time. And it's rowdy. It's rowdy. There's no other way to describe it. But it's lovely.
I think the film is not necessarily just about the two-tone. I think the film is much more to go further back and understand
It's
that.
deep, yeah.
The thing with the
And
film would have to
that's
go
the
back from the
deep.
very start,
That's the film.
covering the Windrush generation and
Absolutely.
literally like everything.
That's the film. I think, and we're out there pitching to try and do something along those lines.
Yeah.
There's stuff in the ether.
Yeah, we got a script that we called Brown Skins in the Rain, which is me and Dave were developing the scripts, and we've got the scripts, and we're trying to. It's written by a guy called Trix Worrell, who wrote Desmond's back in the day, which is like he's a Peckham kid, Peckham lad, Trix.
Yeah.
I've known him for a few years, and he's written the script. We got the script, and we're trying to develop that into a feature film. It's not easy, it's expensive, but we're while this is running like as it is, we started looking at that more now, and we're trying to develop that. So if anyone's looking for something, give us a shout.
Well, listen, if you're after an actor or maybe a cabbie or something, then you got my number.
If you got £5 million in your bank account, then you got half a chance.
Well, it is a London cabbie.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
No, those days are over. but listen, it was absolutely amazing chatting to you guys. And listen, I hope you enjoyed this.
Yeah, great.
This kind of
It's
cab
been
chat.
brilliant. Thank you.
It's all I think we covered a lot of really kind of important topics there.
I think important ground covered, mate. Yeah.
Without a shadow of a doubt. And listen, I'm going to be going to the exhibition. I can't wait to come and see it. And listen, it's been incredible. And how can people follow you as well? If anyone's watching this, how can they get in touch with you both?
There's a website which I can never remember the name of. Dave.
That'll be From the Caribbean to Coventry. If you search for that on any of your search engines, you'll find it.
Yeah, there's loads of stuff online now. So there's loads of social media and Facebook and Twitters. I'm all over for both all that stuff, doing other bits and pieces. But you can find the dedicated sites on the social media, and look, just drop us a message. We'll pick it up. Every day we're checking it. We're responding, and we're being proactive with that. So just get in touch, and if you've got a story or some photographs, just let us know.
Yeah, absolutely.
But listen, absolutely incredible chatting to you both. And as we say in the cab game, be lucky.
Yes, and thank you for the invitation, mate, and all the best to you.
Listen, actually, I should say we must do a part 2 as well, Bax, because I know obviously there's a lot more we've got. Me and you have got to talk about.
Yeah, mate, I can talk for weeks. Don't worry about that.
Listen, we're going to get you back in the cab for a part 2 and probably a part 3 and a part 4.
Yeah.
It's The Sopranos.
All the best, mate.
It's an honour.
Thank you. Cheers.